All right, guys. Hey, welcome back. Number one podcast. I'm your host, Coach Jake. Just wanted to drop in with you guys. Yesterday, we had a stellar chat with one of my coaches, the legend Frank Shamrock. That was awesome. Thank you so much for him stopping in, sharing all his wisdom. And remember, guys, we're going to be doing this in Las Vegas, February 21st through 23rd. Rocking and rolling. It's going to be amazing. Frank will be there. And then actually my guest today is the amazing creator of Superhumans, Pat Miletich. And I want you, before I bring Pat on, I want you guys to know that, I've worked really hard over the last 25 years to put catch wrestling back on the map with the respect it deserves. So, the things that I can hold my head up high and be proud of, and there's a lot, actually. I've worked very hard for a long time on this, and I appreciate every single one of you guys that has supported us over the years. We've done a lot of amazing things, scientific wrestling. Like, had I been hit by a bus prior to us really kicking this off in 2003, and I'd been working on it a couple of years prior, it would have been a whole different story. So, we were able to bring Mark Schultz, Wade Chalice, Guinness record holder for the most wins and pins in all of wrestling, Guinness record holder, and then also Mark Schultz, Olympic gold medalist, UFC guy, Foxcatcher movie made after him, good friend of ours. We were able to bring in Fujiwara. First time bringing him out here for camps for you guys. First time to bring out Billy Robinson. Brought you competitions co-developed by Carl Gotch himself, the founding father of MMA. So we brought out the first CatchCon competitions. Obviously brought Barnett to a larger audience. Brought, of course, Wade Chalice. Where I'm really going with this, and now we got Frank, but I'm really, really particularly happy about bringing Pat Miletich into the fold of catch wrestling. Pat is, first of all, superhuman himself, but it's now, sometimes it's real easy for athletes, if they have a talent and they have a drive to rock and roll and do everything and make all the sacrifices and the blood, sweat, and tears for themselves, but they have a hard time reproducing that in other athletes. Well, here we got Pat Miletich, who I'm very happy to be bringing into the CatchCon world and adding his unbelievable insights. But this is a guy who was the first UFC welterweight champ. Okay, no performance-enhancing drug scandals or anything like that. Just legit, a hard worker, Iowa guy. Also UFC Hall of Famer, incredible broadcaster, trained like 11 or 12 world MMA champions. Matt Hughes, we all know about Miletich training systems and that gym. So I am just absolutely honored to be bringing all of this stuff together. In February, we're going to be rocking and rolling. Oh, and I see Pat is here. So, without any further ado, I want to bring him on. Let me just patch him in right here, make sure. What's up, Pat?
Hi, Jake. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Good.
How you doing this morning? Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm doing okay, buddy. Doing okay.
Listen, I was just kind of blowing you up a little bit before I brought you in here to everybody on the stream. I'm so thrilled to bring you in. And, the thing that I love about you, I brought in a lot of guys to help people who are passionate about CatchCon, from Wade, whom you've met, Wade Chalice, and, obviously guys like Barnett and Billy Robinson, these guys. But where I'm really excited about bringing you in is, obviously, you've done it yourself. You're like a welterweight champ, UFC Hall of Famer, but you've coached everybody else. But then the thing that I really want people to understand is, beyond your abilities to coach, beyond, coming up in the wrestling heartland of Iowa, I was really fascinated to hear that it's actually kind of in your blood. right? It's Johnny Miletich, right?
Yeah, my great uncle. My great uncle. So there was several boys in that family, and he was, of course, the toughest one out of the bunch. But he was on the 32 Olympic boxing team. Was a catch guy. Used to go to carnivals and fairs and beat up the carnival strongmen. That was his way. Like I said, historically, the carnival strongmen would do their feats of strength and all that good stuff, and then challenge anyone in the crowd to come up and wrestle them or to box them. And so, yeah, he would go up and either wrestle them, box them, whatever, and that's how he honed his skills. A lot of times was and make some money at the same time. He'd go beat those guys up.
That's so amazing because there is this big tradition in catch wrestling. Obviously, the carnivals, in particular here in the United States, the at shows or the taking on all comers. But there's also this tradition, which is like the proto MMA guy, just like Johnny Miletich, and they were called a combo man. It wasn't called mixed martial arts; it was called a combo man because they could both box and do the catch can submission and pin style wrestling. You were telling me, was it yesterday? I think we chatted briefly yesterday. You were telling me some about, was it Primo Carnera?
Oh yeah, there's an article I've got to look through. So I've got boxes of stuff that I've collected over the years. But he was asked to go to Miami to spar with Primo Carnera, and everybody knows. Look, Primo was not the best heavyweight in the world in history by any means, but my uncle was a light heavyweight, and they wanted Primo to get faster. So they had my uncle go to Miami to spar with him. And there's pictures, literally, the training camp was in the backyard of a mansion in Miami. There's palm trees, and you can see the mansion in the background where the ring is set up. And there's these like really cool, I don't know what color, but they were like red or blue with white stripe, like big giant tents, like some sort of weird, like changing rooms or whatever. I don't know what was going on in those, but it was unique. But there's pictures of my uncle sparring with Primo Carnera, and the title of the article is Johnny Miletich pushes enough leather into Primo Carnera's face to shoe the Italian army. Really awesome. Cool article. Really cool article.
That is the art of the headline right there. Man, they don't write headlines like that anymore.
Yeah, and when he was an amateur, he knocked Joe Louis down 7 times in 3 rounds.
Wow.
That was up in Detroit. So that's when, during the Depression, because the auto plants closed, my uncle had left Southern Iowa to go to Detroit to work in the auto plants. And then the auto plants closed. And so my uncle picked up boxing again to try and pay bills and get food, because back then, as an amateur at least, you would be paid in certificates for food. So you'd get like $15 or $20 or whatever as like food stamps almost to go and get food. So that's how they fed themselves, was by fighting. And so that's kind of what was going on back then. And people talk about, who's tough demographically now in history. Well, back then during the Depression, everybody was in poverty. So everybody was tough. You had to be. You had no choice, right?
Yeah, we're getting some people on the live feed. Lisbon, Portugal checking in. What's up, Stephen? Just wanted to say hey. So
very cool.
Yeah, right. So, what was it like in your family? Like, how did you stumble into the combat sports? Because now there's this precedent genetically or in your ancestry with Johnny Miletich. How did you kind of begin stumbling into it? Was it through high school wrestling and then into other stuff, or what was your?
Well, I just like family reunions or being on the farms down in Southern Iowa. My Uncle Myler passed away in the 70s, so I was still pretty young. But I was drawn to him for some reason. I kind of just would follow him around the family reunions and all that sort of stuff. It's just something about him he liked me a lot. Like, he put me on his knee a lot and talked to me and that sort of stuff. So there was just something about him I didn't know at the time, of course, being a little kid, just what a big deal he actually was back in the, those days. But yeah, just something that drew me to him. And as I learned more about him and read about, all of his exploits and the things that he had done, that I connected with him. You know what I mean? And so for me, I guess ultimately, there was a great story, for instance, and I'll just go off on a tangent. There's a story about him, my uncle, I think it was my Uncle Bob, that got trapped by the bull on the family farm in the barn. And my Uncle Miler punched it, and it left my Uncle Bob alone. So whatever, punched it in the, side of the face, or, whatever. But
what was that Mongo in Blazing Saddles?
Yeah, no, but so yeah, it was just something about him. His nose was flat, really, just a rugged looking guy.
Did you start with boxing or wrestling, or how did you? Where was
I started wrestling at. I was in kindergarten or first grade, and I had to walk from where we lived past my elementary school about a mile and a half. Back then at 5 or 6 years old, we'd walk or ride our bikes, right? So I walked down to what was at that time in Bettendorf, Iowa, the high school, and they had a wrestling, like kind of a seminar type thing going on. And so I went to that, dressed in my gym trunks and t-shirt and my canvas, Converse tennis shoes, whatever I thought were, wrestling shoes at the time. and learned some wrestling. And then on the way home, I somehow got into an argument with a kid named John, and he gave me my choice. He said, "Do you want to fight or do you want to wrestle?" And I thought, this kid's pretty big. I don't know if fighting would be a good idea. Let's wrestle. And he goes, "Okay." So he grabs me, throws me down, sits on my chest, and he goes, "You're stuck." And I don't even know what the term stuck is at the time, right? I'm 5 or 6 years old, whatever. And he gets up off me and walks away. And then I come to find out that's the head middle school wrestling coach's son, right?
Oh, wow.
And so once I learned that, I thought, he manhandled me pretty easily. So it'd probably be a good idea to learn how to wrestle, just because that was a really bad feeling to be that vulnerable to another human being, So that I think that was a lasting impression on me, a sense of fear that I didn't like. So I think that pushed me to wrestle. And then, so you think from kindergarten or first grade, it took me literally, Jake, till 8th grade to win a tournament. I'd get I'd get smashed in the first round or whatever. And then I made it through the first round, and I get like 7th place or something. And then I got up to like 4th place for a while, and then 3rd place. And I was like, holy cow, this is 2nd place a bunch of times. And then finally won a tournament in Sigourney, Iowa. I'll never forget that. I was in 8th grade, summer after 8th grade, and I finally won a tournament.
Well, I don't think a lot of people really understand how steep the learning curve is on wrestling, in particular in a state like Iowa. So it's understandable to work at something that long to finally be number one.
Well, yeah. And growing up, I was a sickly kid, my respiratory system, I had all kinds of health issues and stuff as well that, I knew nothing about at the time. But, through time, I obviously learned a lot about that and how to correct those situations. But yeah, it was just, I guess I just didn't want to give up. I was frustrated, and that kept me coming back, It's like, have you played golf before?
Yeah, I'm awful at it, but yeah, I've played.
Well, here's the thing, though. The one thing that'll keep somebody coming back when they're a terrible golfer is hitting that one great shot during the round of golf. And they're like, there's hope. There's hope. So I think that's probably what it was for me in wrestling. I'd hit one great takedown and think, okay, I've got a chance.
It's like Lucy with the football, like keep dangling, and you get that one, and you think you really got it. Yeah. So then, what was the transition like into the MMA scene? Like how how did you get involved with it? Was there somebody you met? Was it like, how did you get involved with, like, I'm assuming you didn't, or did you start with UFC?
I had boxed in middle school for, I think a year and a half, something like that. And then when I left college early, my mom had to deal with heart problems, and so she had to quit her job, and she was kind of going through tough times. So I went back. I was young enough. All my brothers and my sister were all married, had families. Most moved away. So I had left school, went back, and I was working 3 jobs back in Iowa. I think I was probably around 20, something like that, 19 or so. But anyway, working, pouring concrete during the day, and then bouncing and bartending at 2 different clubs. And then I decided that I ended up doing martial arts, karate, kickboxing, stuff like that, because I still was, competitive, of course. And it was totally by chance that I ended up doing that. And then got exposed to, judo and some of the grappling arts and stuff. And then the UFC came out, and I had turned pro in kickboxing and won a US title. And once I saw the UFC, they created my sport. That's it, because, I had that wrestling background and everything else. So then I really dove heavily into jiu-jitsu and Russian Sambo and Muay Thai, and, which I'd already been learning, and boxing, and spent a lot of time at the Quad City Davenport Boxing Club, Pena's Boxing Club in downtown Davenport, and donated blood there for quite a while. And so I felt like I had been putting the pieces of the puzzle together before the UFC was even created. You know what I mean?
So what do you think was, like, we all have these kind of, like, these years, like a golden year, and we have multiple of them in our lifetime. But back then, when was that for you? Was it like 96, 97? What really, like, flipped your level of engagement, you becoming big and known and all that kind of stuff? Like, what year was that?
I think, to be honest with you, there wasn't a moment where things happened suddenly, in any way, shape, or form. For me, it was, I think, figuring out how to heal my respiratory system that I had struggled with my entire childhood at around age 20, which changed my trajectory, my endurance, my recovery, all those types of things, and a lot of knowledge, about how the body works.
Yeah.
But, doing a lot of, everything is to prepare us, right? So when the UFC was under a lot of scrutiny, politicians were going after it. I was doing televised debates against politicians, doing a lot of research into other sports, into injury rates, into deaths, all that sort of stuff. And being able to have, by the end of a debate, having a politician admit that I was correct, and that it really was about the money that they weren't getting because it wasn't sanctioned, things like that, where, it's been a learning process. So that nothing sudden in any way, shape, or form, because when I won the UFC title, we were in the dark ages. The pay-per-view stuff was shut down in a lot of places. We were blackballed by the rest of the sports world, the politicians, the athletic commissions, all of that sort of stuff. And the only people that seemed really enamored with us were professional athletes from other sports. So during those dark ages, guys that were Major League Baseball players and football players and pro wrestlers, those are the types of people that would come and hang out with us in the locker rooms. They just wanted to be around us before we competed, So we got a lot of support from the other professional athletes, actually.
Yeah, and early on, it seemed like it was like, there was these teams that coalesced, right? Obviously, everybody knows the Gracies. A lot of people know about the Lion's Den, but really Miletich fighting systems, really, man, like, you had everybody. And this is kind of like where I'm really excited to have you involved with Scientific Wrestling. And then, we'll talk briefly about ShoPro, with you being El Presidente of ShoPro Wrestling. But, you talked about the science, and one thing you always are talking about is, like, creating superhumans and what you had to learn to overcome the respiratory problems, the mold, and all that kind of things. When did you first really start being like, man, we're going to make a team? Like, who were the first guys to come on the team? I mean, everybody knows, Robbie Lawler or like all the big name guys, Matt Hughes, all those guys. But how did that really start coalescing?
It started, Mark Hansen, who's a Davenport police officer still. He and I were training partners. He was a All-American lineman for Northern Iowa football team. He was, a very powerful, big guy, and we've kind of built a snowball of individuals from the Quad Cities around us, and then that started to grow. And once I won, I guess, the UFC title, the 4-man tournament initially that I was in, that I think started the momentum of people coming. The Jeremy Horns from Nebraska and other guys started showing up. Jens Pulver showed up. He was, the first. He was the first UFC champ that we, had out of our camp, and he jumped on a train with 2 duffel bags and just showed up and slept he slept like on the floor of the gym during kids class. He had nowhere to go. That sort of stuff.
That's
100% commitment. And but I think about that. A guy that I had coached when he was a kid had taught at Boise State, because Jens was a wrestler at Boise State. Nate, guy that had trained underneath me from the time he was, I think, elementary or middle school into high school, was Jens Pulver's kickboxing coach before he came to me. So there was a connection. So Nate got in touch with me and said, "Hey, I got this wrestler from Boise State who's really got a lot of potential. Can he come train with you?" And send him out. So he jumped on a train and showed up, and the rest is history. So that momentum was built. Matt Hughes was the only guy I ever really recruited, I guess, because I refereed his first fight in Chicago, south side of Chicago, when he fought a black belt in jiu-jitsu, a guy from Brazil, and knocked the guy out. The guy put him in a triangle choke. He picked him up like in the Carlos Newton fight and slammed the Brazilian and knocked him unconscious. And I go, this guy's obviously an incredible wrestler. I knew about his wrestling prowess, knew nothing about striking or submissions. And I thought, if I'm going to make a world champ, this guy's it,
So yeah, this is absolutely fascinating. And then you transitioned and you did such big things with regards to broadcasting and like you were saying, like advocacy for the sport early on. I'm always fascinated by, clearly I'm very, very involved with kind of the evolution of the history and really going back a couple hundred years. I remember where you really, I've obviously known of you forever, as a fan and your impact, but I was listening to you on Rogan one time, and that's when I was like, it really lit off your connection to Catch as Catch Can, because you were talking about catch wrestling, and you were talking about Matt Hughes really being a catch wrestler and stuff like that. So, when did you start making like these broader connections between the kickboxing, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the MMA, all that, and then bringing that into kind of the historical side, especially with Johnny Miletich?
I think I was just always, I was always enamored with history anyway, right? History of mankind in general. So that was an easy connection for me. But, when I would get exposed, for instance, to when I started to experience Muay Thai kickboxing, what is the history of this? And going back to, Thai and Laotian soldiers in times of peace would fight each other to keep their skills, up to par, so to speak. Back in the day when they would wrap their hands in resin rope, dip in glue, resin, and then dip in broken glass, and they would fight each other like that, right? So think of that type of fight and the intensity of that, with broken, jagged glass on your fists. That's where you get really good defensively, Jake. But that sort of history to me was very cool. And of course, the history of wrestling and catch wrestling was certainly part of that education for me, and just, learning, about pancreation, back in the original Olympics. Mankind's body, our figure has not changed. We have learned and forgotten over thousands of years how to fight, and how, whether it's domestication, and then, that whole strong men make for good times make for weak men,
Right.
that's the same type of circular evolution, right? Instead of just everybody learning from history and going, hey, let's just stay strong and healthy and create a really cool world. It's always just this cyclical stupidity. But anyway, nonetheless, back to topic is, so when somebody would basically think that they had invented a submission hold and then name it after themselves, I would laugh and go, dude, there were guys doing that 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
You didn't discover anything. We didn't just grow two arms and now there's shoulder and elbow locks. You know what I mean? So stuff like that. So I never even would give anything a name. People go, what's the name of that move? And I go, I don't know. That's the move. That you can visually see it, you can understand it, the mechanics of it. I really don't know that. I don't care about the name, because
Well, I love to like because you have such a breadth and a grasp of things. Like when we came to you with this ShoPro Wrestling project, it's funny because yesterday you're like, oh no, you got to go look at my page. I just posted something. I shared some from Jeremy Horn that you guys used to do. So years ago, tell me a little bit about this. You were doing tag team grappling in between MMA bouts.
Yeah. So the younger guys would fight. We would have the young guys, the amateurs, fight weekly. I mean, they could fight weekly. Literally, they could do amateur boxing matches at the time, to get their striking better. They could do kickboxing. They could do amateur MMA. And then during the intermission, so to speak, yeah, my guys that were UFC guys, UFC level guys, we would just have fun and do tag team submission grappling matches and things like that. And the crowds loved it. I mean, they were far more entertained, I think, by our antics, because we were having fun with it, right? We're having a lot of fun with it. We're laughing, we're joking with each other. And it's not, I don't think it's on that film. It might be toward the end. I haven't watched the whole thing, but there was a time when we were doing 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 tag team. And at one point toward the end of the match, everybody ended up in the ring in a pile going for submissions on each other, right?
So like a battle royal or whatever.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It was like the ultimate submission cage battle, whatever, where it's a pile of bodies and everybody's got, elbow locks and ankle locks and chokes and everybody's wrenching on each other. It was a lot of fun.
Well, and that speaks to kind of the spirit of ShoPro, is that, we want to take some of the business lessons from pro wrestling. And that is, instead of showing the same match over and over again, which is like boxing, which to me is the model that MMA has taken. It's just the same match over and over again, maybe an extension of the time period or add a couple extra rounds for championships, but it's the same rule set. Whereas pro wrestling is a variety show. There are these tag teams, these other situations, and there is a little bit of levity and entertainment value, but it's still the thing that we're doing with ShoPro is make it straight up and up bettable, competitive matches. And that was really exciting. And I want to give a special shout out to Mariah Prusha and Define the Fight. I see it behind you for bringing on the ShoPro. Yeah, there we go. Bringing on the ShoPro cage match that we were able to do with Brandon Riggins and Blade Hawk, which we were blessed to have you referee. That was a lot of fun. What is it that with regards to the CatchCon, we've got CatchCon coming up in February in Vegas. We're going to be filming some matches there, some tag team and singles matches. What is it that excites you in particular about, the catch wrestling, the ShoPro wrestling, the scientific wrestling? I know all the people that are trying to pull at you and get your attention and stuff. Why do you care about this? What excites you or is important to you about it?
Well, I think the history, of it, the resurgence of catch wrestling, which is going to be huge as more people are exposed to it. They're going to love it, without a doubt. But the hardest workers, the people who have put in the mental, physical, all the realms of paying attention to the mechanics, the component, the technique, all the conditioning, everything that's gone into it. You can't lay on your back and you can't play games and you can't just survive. That doesn't work in catch wrestling. You have to be the whole package. You have to have that tendon strength, that explosiveness, the knowledge, the ability to hit great takedowns, the ability of control, the ability to perform and stay out of submissions. It's the whole gambit of grappling skills combined that make it the superior grappling art ultimately.
Yeah, the takedowns, the pins, and the submissions.
It just creates better athletes. It creates more powerful human beings and monsters that you have to be able to survive in that. So you can't lay on your back and just play the guard game. You can't do it because you get pinned. So that's the difference, and it makes it much more exciting. You don't sit there and wait for somebody to pass the guard for an hour,
right.
type thing. That's not,
Yeah, and to stop the pin, you throw up an arm. Now all of a sudden you got an arm bar or an arm lock, or it pushes the action.
Yeah, and it's not discounting the amazing technique of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the ability for the smaller man to do incredible things and win, in catch submissions, because they do that in catch matches, right? We just watched it, but it definitely makes it a lot more strategic, a lot more action-packed, and it's just better for the viewers altogether.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I find to be a theme in all of your work. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were saying it's like the complete package. It really creates like a holistic athlete, and that seems to be something that drives so much of your activity, your thought, your action. Is this idea of creating like superhumans, of like really dialing in with what the human being is potential really is, and helping people hit their full potential. That's what I've loved also having you involved with scientific wrestling, coming to the camps, coming to CatchCon, and to turn these guys onto it. What are kind of the fundamentals of that? What maybe tell guys a little bit of what they can expect, coming to a scientific wrestling camp with you or coming to CatchCon with you?
Well, I mean, I like to approach things now where I remember the first seminar that I went to that was taught by Benny the Jet Urquidez.
Oh yeah.
Which was a kickboxing seminar, and he was talking in realms of concepts, not necessarily techniques, right? And so at the time, I, pretty naive, don't know anything, and I'm going, listen, I'm thinking to myself, I'm here to learn techniques. I'm here to learn how to kickbox. I'm not here to listen to this philosophical garbage that I thought at the time, and my blockheaded ways of not understanding concepts. And so when I speak in terms of concepts, I try to make it palatable, at least. I don't go off into Eastern philosophies and a lot of other things. It's more that wrestling, doesn't matter what combatives it is, whether it's wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, MMA, catch as catch can, whatever it is, all the way up to warfare, mechanized warfare, or any kind of warfare. It's all about deception, right? It's all about making sure that 100% the screen, the television screen that I am, the image that my opponent sees, is not actually what's happening.
Yeah, like not telegraphing those
kind of. It's and a lot of deception where he's 100% sure that that I'm throwing a straight right hand when in reality it's a left uppercut, or I'm going for an armbar when in reality I see the choke down the road. All those types of things, and thinking in terms of deceptive ways, and you have to have somewhat of a, I think all of us are capable of it, somewhere in our brain, a diabolical section of the brain that is focused on being able to deceive, to trick, to lure, to trap, to be the predator, that sort of stuff. And that, those are kind of the concepts that I like to talk about. But you have to learn the fundamental, each technique and how they fit together. And depending on the defense that comes, the other three offensive techniques I could use off the tree branches, so to speak.
Yeah, like a decision tree kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's all based on that sort of stuff. But so you've got to be able to then put everything together. And so the concept that no technique is intended to succeed. There's no reason that I should think my double leg is going to work at all, because he's going to defend it. Right now, I have full intent. I have full intent of hitting that double leg as hard as I can, setting it up as best I can, and finishing with that double. But I have to understand that it's the transition moving on to the next technique that's the most important part, right? So the transition game, the people that are successful in any combative art are the ones that understand the transitions the best, right? So yes, they've got to have great setups, great fundamentals, all those things for each individual technique, but the ability to stop fighting the resistance. It's like when I was observing, when I would train law enforcement, and I went to a convention and I was watching a guy teaching defensive tactics, and the guys that were in his class were saying, it's not working. And he would say, well, do it harder. And they'd go, well, he's stronger than me. It's not working. He's like, well, do it harder, and I'm sitting there laughing going, no, move on. let go and move on. Go to something else. That's the transition.
And one of the things that this strikes up in my mind that I know that you work on is you have this, talking about conceptual thinking. Yours is like leverage based.
Well,
one of your approach is like leverage based submissions and control.
Yeah, sure. Of course. I mean, ultimately submissions are based on leverage, but and being successful on the ground are leverage. But ultimately angles, all those types of things. But I always had to train with guys that were much bigger than me, early on. And I think that even though I was pretty strong for my weight, grappling against guys that were like Dave Turner, who at the time was former state champion wrestler in Iowa, but all-American lineman for the University of Iowa. And he was 285 pounds and 6'6" or 6'7". Wow. I'm not going to overpower Dave Turner. It's not going to happen. So I would have to, the first no holds barred tournament that I fought in Chicago, I would do suicide rounds with Dave Turner, Mark Hansen, who were both, one was 285, one was 270. And then another guy that was 2 1/4, he would put on the boxing gloves, the guy that weighed 2 1/4, and he would throw punches and kicks at me, and I would have to take him down. And then as soon as I took him down, Dave Turner and Mark Hansen would alternate and dive on me. And so the round would only end if I could get a submission on one of those guys.
Wow.
And so that went on, for sometimes an hour and a half, battling with a fresh guy constantly, and all of them much bigger. And so you're not going to overpower those guys. You're not going to outstrength them. It just doesn't happen. So I learned that leverage was very important. Deception was very important. Quickness was very important, all those things, because back then the tournaments were no weight divisions.
Right.
So I was fighting guys that were, obviously bigger than me.
Well, and then so setups, deception, leverage, all these things you're talking about. But then also one of the things that I've really come to appreciate that you're deeply involved with is like nutrition and this like I don't know what you call it, like agricultural responsibility. I don't know what would you call that?
Well, just the overall understanding that I try to help people with is that we are the soil, that our food is supposed to have 90 plus essential nutrients, a certain number of vitamins, amino acids. There's components that are absolute musts in human performance and health. And that's no longer, it's not in our food because it's been mined out of the soil many, many years ago. 1936 history again. Senate document 264. People can look that up. Senate document 264. It was an article read on the Senate floor and put into the Senate minutes, basically talking about the absolute destruction and depletion of American soil in 1936.
Wow.
So, 90 years ago, that they knew we were already in trouble. Then the introduction of the synthetics for agriculture purposes and growing food synthetically, where now we're at a point where 95%, at least 95% of our food is all synthetically grown with synthetic chemicals, heavy metals, all these things, which are detrimental to the human organism and the environment, right? Once people understand that problem, then they have to understand that the microorganisms that used to be in the soil were the only thing created that can convert toxins and heavy metals, things like that, into beneficial nutrients that would create.
And you were doing this with your athletes too, right? Like you were actually
Yeah.
really dialed in on their nutrition, making sure they didn't have these things that would antagonize their immune systems. Like, what did that look like? Like, did you get them on a special diet? Did you actually have to detox people? Like,
I would advise them, and detoxing somebody, back then, 20 years ago, was not anything like detoxing somebody now. So you got to understand, I was already working with guys who were decent to really good athletes. So they were operating most of the time at fairly high level, but I needed their endurance and recovery to be at a totally different level to be able to force them to do things that I demanded of them, where most people could not survive that for even 2 days. They would leave. So the antioxidant properties of fruits, vegetables, berries, things like that, have the ability to go in and pull toxins out of the cell, right? And repair damaged DNA, assist in the repair of damaged DNA.
So you're even like coaching on the nutrition side of stuff, not just technique and performance.
Yeah, I mean, back then it was a little more archaic, but just the basic understanding of removing toxins and replacing with high grade organic substances is how the body is supposed to repair. Great endurance, the bonding with hydrogen in the cell to create more oxygen. When you have more oxygen at a cellular level, you don't build up as much lactic acid. You have better endurance. You recover better. There's just other components to it. But back at that point, you could still find berries and fruit that were grown with organic inputs. Now it's very hard to do. So the antioxidant properties in our food are almost non-existent. Plus you compound that with the chemicals that were used to grow those foods, and that ending up in the soil, the water, the food, and everything else. Now you've got major problems for human health, and we can observe that around us today, everywhere in America that we go, right? So it's not that hard if I have, which I do, access to the right substances to put into athletes to create a better human being. If I were to go back into coaching, that is going to be a must, that everybody's going to be on these types of substances and products that are going to keep your body cleaned out, your cells cleaned out, repair your DNA on a continuous, all of these things, and build just an army of very scary human beings, right? So I can't create anything, a great sculpture with a crappy piece of rock, right?
Right.
So I've got to have the rock to be able to turn them into a world champion, right?
Which you've done. What is it, 11 times or 12 times? I can't keep track.
12. Yeah, 12 times, I believe, something like that.
I mean, that's again why I'm so stoked to have you, caring about what we're doing and really trying to get, seeing the vision of getting Catch Can back as a fundamental, foundational piece, especially right now with MMA being, as big and it keeps growing. I mean, there's no reason why Catch Can shouldn't be kind of a foundational training modality for it. And I'm just real honored to have somebody of your caliber, one that's had so much success teaching and coaching other athletes, had so much success with your own. And then also, it's in the blood, like with, I always go back to this cool thing about Johnny Miletich. It's just so amazing. I don't want to keep you all day. I know you've got a busy life, and I appreciate you doing this as a favor to me, jumping on kind of impromptu today. Anything that you would tell these guys, like a Jens Pulver who literally just jumps in a train or a bus or whatever with his bags and shows up into the room and commits. What about these guys that were trying to get into like CatchCon and into these seminars? Any words that you would say with regards to taking risks and doing big things? You know this as well as I do. Testosterone is the big risk taking drug, and we've seen a precipitous drop in the testosterone in the world, in America.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to these young guys who kind of might need a little kick in the pants to improve their life? Do hard things. What would be your message to them to show up in February?
Is number one, no matter how hard things get, don't give up. That we can observe people that have succeeded in life through much harder situations than we are in or have been through. That the culminate or the sum of our experiences make us who we are. That they don't dictate, how we should act or how we should feel. That life is to be experienced, and I just had this conversation today while I was out on the country road walking and jogging with Mariah, just explaining that, there was a point in my life where I was kind of throwing in the towel. I was feeling pretty down, to say the least. And she's helped me immensely, with that. But more than anything, it's just, don't give up. Just don't give up and show up. Just keep showing up. And no matter how rough the day is, just keep showing up. And eventually the days get better. It's like with ultra running, the guys that I used to train with, just horrible moments where your feet or your knees or your low back or whatever, these guys are, on training runs of 20, 30, 40, 50 miles. And there's going to be points in those long durations, those runs, where you're in absolute misery, where your knees are killing you, or you're low on energy or whatever. And they say, just don't stop, keep going. Cause in about 2 or 3 miles, all that pain goes away. It might be somewhere else, but it's going to go away. But that's kind of a microcosm of life. Right. So there's going to be painful moments, and you just gotta keep moving.
Well, it's an interesting thing, because like you mentioned earlier, we live in a time actually that's kind of the pinnacle of human comfort and achieve, like technology makes things easy, all that. One of the things that wrestling and fighting and grappling and MMA affords us is this ability to still have a crucible, to still have some sort of very, very difficult thing to do to craft our character and our personality and push us past, our limitations. I just really appreciate you as an example of that, Pat.
I think David Goggins kind of sums it up the best, is at least do one thing a day that really sucks. That just sucks. Like what what was he doing? He was flipping a giant tractor tire for 1 mile. 1 mile of flipping the tire. And that was his for like a week or a month or whatever he chose, duration and time that he did that. He goes, that's what I picked to do every day that absolutely sucked, that he hated. And that's what he did. So pick something, and look, I've been a victim to it. Everybody, Americans are soft. We're soft. Modernity makes cowards and weak men. I mean, it really does. And so, find something that sucks every day and do your best to do it,
Well, guys, CatchCon is going to suck in the best way. We're going to have,
it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be amazing. I'm really excited for it.
I'm excited I'm going to take some of the classes. I'm going to jump in and take your class, Wade Chalice. I'm going to take some classes while I'm there. I'm going to learn some new stuff, buddy.
Well, that's what I love about you too, is that you're just a sponge. It's like you're on this never-ending pursuit of an ever-growing target. I just love it.
Just try and get better, man. Just try and get better. And no matter, even health issues, a lot of people are going through health issues. Please research antioxidants, research where to find your food, where to get your supplements. Are they supplements that were made in the laboratory, or were they created by nature and just gathered, and that sort of stuff. You'll be amazed when you put the real nutrients into your body, how much it moves the needle, how much better you'll feel, how much better you'll perform, how much better you'll think. Just so much to it. But research, just dig into it.
Love it. All right. Hey guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in, listening to these words of wisdom from a guy who's literally just like one win after another. And, like he's saying, like you just don't give up. It's hard. Like these things are where you get purpose and meaning in your life is doing these hard things. So Pat, thank you so much. Excited to see you out in Vegas in February, and everybody keep your eyes open for ShoPro. You'll see more of Pat on ShoPro as well. Pat, have a wonderful day. Thank you.